Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.
Welcome, everyone, to the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. I'm your host, Greg Greenlee, the founder of Blacks in Technology, and this is a show where we talk to Black women and men who are engineers, innovators, educators, inventors, change makers, and entrepreneurs doing amazing things in the world of technology. This podcast is where they share their stories, experiences, ideas, knowledge, and perspective on tech with the BIT community. And if this is your first time checking us out, you can check us out on the following URLs. We are blacksintechnology.net. We're on Twitter, Black in Technology. That's BLKINTECHNOLOGY. We are also on Facebook. That's facebook.com/blacksintechnology. On LinkedIn and on the gram, we are under Blacks in Technology as well. Okay, so I want to remind everyone that Baseball Hack Day is going to be coming up here Saturday, March 9th. We have a number of our chapters participating in Baseball Hack Day. Should be a fun event. Check our website out to find out where if Baseball Hack Day is being hosted in the city near you. I think right now, San Diego, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, I want to say the Twin Cities, that's Minneapolis, St. Paul area. Maybe Chicago and Detroit. I know that there are Baseball Hack Days happening there. I'm not sure if BIT is hosting them, but there's definitely Baseball Hack Days there if you want to participate. All right, tonight, this is Big Tech Talk Podcast number 118, and we are interviewing the founders of Encounter AI. We're interviewing Derek Johnson, who is a former restaurant franchisee owner and QSR consultant, and also Kaba Kanda, who is a solutions consultant. And we're going to talk to them about their artificial intelligence company that is aimed at improving your retail experience. We're going to also talk about their first product, Mai, which is a voice-enabled ordering assistant that compiles customer orders instantly via drive-through, freeing staff to focus on higher value tasks. So I want to welcome Kaba and Derek to the show. Hey, what's going on, guys?
Doing great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited about this, and I want to give people a little bit of context of how this kind of lined up. Amanda Span, she is a tech entrepreneur, and I think I want to say I don't know if I've had her on a podcast. I may have. We've done 118 of these so far, so I apologize if my memory is not functioning properly right now. But I did meet Amanda and Kat Calvin years ago when they put on an event, I think it was called Black Girls Hack down in Atlanta. And I actually went down there and I covered it for Blacks in Technology. That was my first encounter with Amanda. And we've kept in contact since then. I haven't seen her since then, but I've kept in contact with Facebook friends and seen all her activities, her building companies and things like that. So she reached out. She said, I've got a couple of guys that are doing some pretty cool things with artificial intelligence, and would you interview? And of course, I said yes. And so that's how we got here. So Derek and Kaba, definitely want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, and shout out to Amanda as well for making the connection.
Definitely. So I want to start off by if you guys could tell us a little bit about yourselves, kind of where you're from, your background story, your education, that type of thing. And I'll start off with you, Derek.
Okay, so Derek Johnson, CEO and co-founder of Encounter AI. Where I'm from, so south side of Chicago, born in Chicago, grew up kind of south side suburbs in Calumet City. Went to school primarily in Chicago, and then did my secondary education at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so that's kind of the core of where I've been and what I've done from an educational perspective.
All right, Midwest stand up. I'm in Ohio.
Yeah.
Nice. And you, Kaba?
Yeah, same. From the south side of Chicago. Okay. Went to high school with Derek. That's how we met. And primarily, I did my college in Chicago. I actually went to a few different college institutions. Full disclosure, I actually never finished my bachelor's degree. I kind of feel like Everything I've done as a professional has been self-taught to an extent. So, we can dig more into that if you'd like. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, like, because I'm in the tech world as an engineer, but it wasn't until I was like kind of way into my career as an engineer that I actually went back to college to get any type of degree. It was like, I want to have this degree. I've got 2 sons, so I just want to kind of, just have something to show like, hey, I completed this, and it's okay if you choose that route and go to college. I liked the college experience for the time I was there. But let's talk a little bit about that whole process for you. What was that like?
For me, both of my parents, they emphasized that yes, while education is important, the thing that is more important than the quote unquote education is the knowledge itself and how you apply that knowledge to your personal life, to better yourself, to better your life, to make, opportunities for yourself and for your family. And so I didn't have that same requirement, say, oh, I absolutely positively have to do it, this specific way. Is just, I've always been more of an opportunist. And so if there was an opportunity in front of my face, I went after it. And I've always been a technology person. Like, from the time I could walk, I was walking somewhere to mess with some technology, somewhere where I was taking apart the TV and the VCR, and I was trying to figure out how it worked. And so my first foray into technology as a career, I actually was the IT support manager of the University of Virginia Department of Civil Engineering. And I never took a class. I don't have a certification. It's just something that a skill I've developed over time out of my own natural curiosity for it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to badmouth or disregard getting a degree. Like, it's a very valuable way to, get off into a certain career. But I also, I'm not ashamed of my path into this career, and I want to use it as an inspiration for people who didn't get a degree, who either can afford to get a degree. Yeah. There's opportunities out there if you're willing to work hard. Is really my message.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because one of the things here at Blacks in Technology as an organization, we want to increase participation along with representation for Black women and Black men in tech. But we want to kind of dispel this notion that you need to have a college degree in order to succeed in this career field. Like I said, it wasn't until later in my career that I even went back to college in order to get a degree. But I was already excelling in my career. And so, just having, you kind of say that to let people know, anyone who's listening, if this is a path that you want to go on, embark on that path. And we're here as a community to help you, but there's tons of resources out there to get you started, and you don't need that degree. And you can easily make 6 figures, or you can turn whatever your passion is in technology into an entrepreneurial venture.
Exactly.
So I think that's very important. So you said you two say you met in high school. How did that encounter happen?
We was actually did music back in the day. So like most individuals, of course, school was first, but then secondary to that, you was either doing basketball, right, or you was doing music. And me and the clique we was musicians, right? So we was doing music. We would perform at the talent shows and things like that. And Kabah was actually doing video at that time, right? Mm-hmm. We were aware of each other. We was networking with each other, and we kept that network as we went forward. So,
I'm going to say that I love it. This is another thing about representation that I love, because as Black women, as Black men, I'm not going to say everyone loves music, but it's part of our culture. It's part of our foundation, and it is what it is. I used to do music. I love hip hop. So I used to do hip hop. I was a hip hop artist for a number of years. And so I like to put that in the forefront, because I don't want our young people to get this notion that just because you get into tech or embark on this entrepreneurial venture that you can't do other things as well. That, I got to give up music in order to do. No, you don't. You can do music and you can do tech at the same time. And it's perfectly fine. There's tons of, it's so crazy that I run into tons of people who are in tech, and they used to be DJs. They might have, rap. They might have, did R&B music or some type of music in some form or fashion. And now they do tech, but they still do that on the side as well. They still love music. I still have a passion for music as well. I don't do it nearly as much, but, just to say that this is something that you can do along with, pursuing other ventures such as tech, such as being an entrepreneur. I think that's what we need, and we need to hear more of. And I'm glad you all brought that out. Excellent.
Most definitely, man. I always tell people, I said, creative energy is one of the most influential energies you can harness, right? So as long as you harnessing that in the right capacity, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's technology, whether it's being creative and doing music, right? Mm-hmm. As a culture, as long as we're harnessing that creative energy, what we can do is boundless. So
I agree. So I want to talk to you all about, being entrepreneurs and kind of what led you to decide to be an entrepreneur. I'll start with Kabal. What kind of led up to that point where you said, "Hey, this is kind of what I want to do"?
I've always had the entrepreneurship spirit, like Derek briefly mentioned. When he was doing music, I was doing video, and I love music, so I wanted to be the person creating the music videos, for him and for the rap artists we were working with. And initially, when I first went to college, I went to film school, and I always said I'm going to start my own, production company, which eventually I did. And so, just kind of taking the reins and just kind of being independent, that's just kind of in me, just wanting to utilize my own talent, my own ideas to create something, and not necessarily just, be a part of someone's bottom line. It gives me energy. It moves me and inspires me to be doing something, for myself. And so, I started a production company when I was in college. I actually did film production, video production, and live events. And from the IT tech support side, that's something I've always done, somewhat as a business in and of itself, long before I ever did it as a professional being hired to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I have that spirit in me to do it. And so when Derek presented this idea to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to co-found this company with me?" It was a no-brainer for me. So
excellent. And what about you, Derek? What led you to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, man. So I'll start off for real. It was the family influence. I always tell people my first job was installing America Online CDs, right? In the south suburbs, my mom would pick up the phone, America Online CDs would come in the mail back then, and everybody wanted the internet, right? And so while my friends was cutting grass, I would go install American Online CD for $25, right? And that was my first kind of take of entrepreneurship. From there, it was largely influenced by people in my network, right? So I remember growing up in grammar school, the local McDonald's franchisee used to sponsor our Student of the Month program, right? And I was a student of the month. So we got to see firsthand, like, here are people of color, diverse individuals that are running their own businesses, that are transforming their communities. And that always inspired me, right? And so I wanted to make sure that as I matriculated throughout life, that I became entrepreneurial as well, such that I had the means to give back to the community as well as create the world that I wanted to see manifest. So.
Yeah, that's super dope, man. Representation is so important. I mean, if people don't believe that, just look at what Black Panther has done. Just look at, what Obama has done for just the influence wise, being influential and sparking the minds of our young people to want to achieve higher goals and also see themselves doing something that they never thought that, could be possible. I think that's super important. Excellent.
Definitely.
And so, Derek, so you were a restaurant entrepreneur, correct?
Right. So I did some investing in the restaurant space. I had a franchise that I owned, as well as I did some consulting in the quick service restaurant space. And then my professional job, day-to-day job, I was running just research and development for a large consulting firm, if you will, top 4 consulting firm in the world, where there my day-to-day job was just looking at a variety of technologies such as machine learning, artificial intelligence. At the time, it was big data and IoT, et cetera.
Right.
And then looking and figuring out how do we design business solutions that people wanted, right? So for me, that's how I started becoming more of a tech entrepreneur, as I saw firsthand how large corporations was transforming these simple ideas into $100 million and $1 billion businesses.
That's important, because I like the journey that you had in becoming a tech entrepreneur, mainly because there's this sense out there, and I talk about this quite a bit, but I think it's worth mentioning it again, that there's this sense that if you want to be an entrepreneur, that that's what you just need to do. Like you shouldn't so to speak, make money for other people. But I like to tell people that some of your these ideas, especially when I listen to other tech podcasts, these ideas that people come up with come from them working at a particular or working inside a particular tech industry, and them seeing shortcomings or seeing where company A might fall short on achieving some solution for someone, and so that might spark the idea for them to say, hey, you know what? I see a gap here. I think if I work on a solution, maybe I can spin this off into my own company. So I think it's important that you mentioned that you're kind of on the inside first, right? You've seen a gap, so you've seen kind of where you could provide a value to or provide value at, and then you embarked on your own to say, hey, you know what? Let's spin this company off and actually hit this target market. And I think this could really blow up. So I think that's pretty cool.
Definitely.
So, Kabal, you started off as a solutions consultant. Tell us a little bit about kind of what a solution consultant entails, and a little bit about your journey to becoming a solutions consultant.
Solutions consultant, I think, is just a fancy way of saying problem solver.
Okay.
So it's generic enough to where, depending on who you're working for, they can deploy you to whatever project, right, and just, hey, figure out what's wrong, fix it. So for me, in particular, I work for Adobe in their digital marketing side of the business. Not a lot of people know Adobe has a whole digital marketing business that is really kind of under the radar. They're known for, obviously, Photoshop and Premiere, video, like the digital creation. But, they have a whole, $1 billion business where they go out and deploy digital marketing technology and strategies for other companies. And so for me, I worked on the team where the product was essentially kind of a WordPress, but on the enterprise level. So they would have all of this content, whether it be like website content, images, data, all of these things that is just kind of all over the place. And so as a solutions consultant, I had to have an in-depth understanding of our product, the content management system, and then go, and look at their system and say, okay, how can we build out a content management system that will facilitate a level of efficiency, a level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Categorizing things so that they can build and deploy their sites and their content easily. And oftentimes we actually work with clients who had legacy versions of the product, and we either had to make it better or to upgrade them to the latest version of the product. Mm-hmm. And my main job was actually coordinating the engineering team, which was primarily offshore. And so we would be onshore with our client, in the States. But the actual engineering was happening offshore. And so I would have to be the connecting point between getting all the deliverables and lining up the needs of the client, and then translating that to, okay, engineering team, this is what you all need to do to get this job done. And there was not a whole lot of communication directly between our engineering team and our clients. That was our job.
Gotcha. That can be a difficult task sometimes, especially when engineers are on a totally different time zone and
there were a lot of 5 a.m. meetings, 10 o'clock at night meetings.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what that's like. I actually used to work for a company, and the majority of our engineers were in India and London. So scheduling something with those guys and women, it was tough. 5 a.m. meetings. It was definitely
all you had to meet. Yeah. So that's where guys like me came in. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
And how I got to that point was interesting. I would say, again, it just goes back to me being an opportunist and not being afraid to take risk. If you're willing to take the risk and you're willing to do the work, those opportunities 100% will open up for you. And so, like I said, I was doing running the IT support at University of Virginia. And I wanted to move back to California. I had lived in California in the Bay Area briefly, and I was tired of Virginia. I was in Charlottesville, of all places. And it was before everything happened. I had left long before then, but still, like, I could still tell you. So, and I came back and I made the decision to switch into, tech development as opposed to IT support. Being Silicon Valley, that's where the opportunities are. That's where the money is. And I decided to do a web development bootcamp, General Assembly. Okay. And so that was like my first foray into doing tech and development specifically. But as you know, these boot camps are not cheap.
Nope, not at
all. But and I figured for something that is essentially a school and is for creating opportunities, there's somebody out there that's giving scholarships for this. So I didn't just look at the price tag and say, oh, well, I can't do it. I'll just, study on my own. So we changed from looking for boot camps to looking for boot camps with scholarships. And again, I'm kind of expounding on this for the people that are listening to this podcast. Like, there are opportunities out there, regardless of what your financial situation is, regardless of what you feel could be limiting you. Like, if you do the research and you're willing to work hard, the opportunities are out there. And so I found a boot camp that had a scholarship. I got into the boot camp and I got the scholarship. Now, the next part of the story is more serendipity, because there was no way I could have, guessed that this was going to happen. My scholarship was actually sponsored by Adobe. So they were the ones writing the checks for my education. And I was like one of the first cohorts to do this. So they were still figuring the program out, but they wanted to do something on top of just getting us through the boot camp. So we facilitated getting internships at Adobe if you successfully completed the boot camp. And this is still a program that they're doing. So, I'll forward you the information that you can post to your website and to Facebook and things of that nature. Because people should 100% look into it. And I believe one of the students now actually just came from Ohio, oddly enough, that you're in Ohio. So, they moved from Ohio to San Francisco to be a part of this program. Like, it's that big of an opportunity that, you know, it's worth moving across the country for. And so after I completed the boot camp, I got an internship. And then from there, I think, again, it was my hard work kicked in. And I feel like the manager that I had wasn't expecting a whole lot of me. Gave me a project that I feel like he thought was going to take the entirety of the 3-month internship. Right. I completed it in 3 weeks. And then he had to start finding more work for me to do. And because of my work ethic and, you know, because of my hard work, I was able to, again, have the opportunity to apply for an interview for the solutions consultant position that I was in. And, you know, my history of, you know, tech support and then the boot camp and just my general nature of, hey, I solve problems. Like, that's just what I do. I was able to get the solutions consultant position, which also gave me the opportunity to partner up with Derek. Like, if I didn't go through that whole journey of, you know, IT support, you know, General Assembly boot camp, working at Adobe, I wouldn't have been like a viable partner to go on this journey that I'm on now with Derek. And that opportunity presented itself to me with, you know, Derek presenting his idea to me and asking me that I want to be a part of it. And, you know, I'm not one to turn down what I believe is an incredible opportunity, you know, and I'm going to put my best foot forward and work as hard as I can and try to make what I can out of it. So.
Excellent. Definitely a lot of jewels, a lot of nuggets in what you said. I mean, you know, people, you know, they talk about, you know, not having the opportunities or the opportunities being there. And to me, you know, for me, it's about, you know, how do you take advantage of these opportunities once you're presented, once it's presented to you, right? And I always say, an opportunity is only as good as the person that can take advantage of it, right? Like, if, you know, there can be a million opportunities in front of you, and if you don't, you know, if you don't know how to take advantage of those opportunities, and if you don't put your best foot forward when embarking on taking advantage of these opportunities, you know, that's how you lose out. So it's you know, it's good to have you know, a good work ethic, but it's also good to have someone there, some people, a support system as well that's in your corner in case you come upon these opportunities and you don't know how to take advantage of them. So I think, you know, what you said about hard work, about ethics, and is very, very valuable, especially to the people that may be listening and to this podcast. So thanks for that. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about Encounter AI. And I'll let Derek start off with this one. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what your company is, what services you provide in Encounter AI.
Yep. So Encounter AI, we essentially make a voice customer service platform, right? Our first product is a product called Mine, designed for the service restaurant industry. And what we do there is it allows restaurants to service their customers faster, friendlier, and more efficient, right? So what that looks like on a drive-through is essentially that same customer would pull up. We're facilitating that transaction with technology, and then we're completing that transaction end-to-end, right? And so what this allows at the core is for restaurant owners as well as management staff to repurpose their staff for that high-value activity, right? Whether that's doing full service in the dining rooms, whether that's being able to back up and fulfill some of the delivery services that are coming to market, or whether that's just working at the front counter and delivering impeccable customer service to the customers in store, right? And so that's what we're doing as solution providers today.
Excellent. I love that idea, especially, you know, when you talk about freeing up resources to do, you know, more high value tasks. I think one of the things that's at least for me that I see, because my father is a former executive restaurant manager. And one of the things back then that I kind of feel that's kind of lost is, that customer service etiquette that used to exist. And this was a fast food restaurant chain, by the way. But there used to be a level of service that you would get no matter what that was demanded, right? Yes sir, no ma'am, how may I help you? That type of thing. And I think that, a service like Encounter AI can actually help to make that experience more consistent across a person's, retail or restaurant or what have you, as well as it can free up managers to actually be able to do the things that customers like, which is customer service, right? Retrain people, making sure that they have the proper training to be able to take care of customers in a proper way. So I love this entire idea of Encounter AI and what you guys are providing. So let me ask you this: what made you all decide to focus your company on kind of creating these AI solutions?
For me, one was just coming from that corporate consulting background, right? Seeing firsthand how companies were now moving into this space, and more importantly, the socioeconomic implications that technologies like this could have. Just from owner's mindset, I knew I wanted to play in the space, right? Because, this is a technological shift that we're going to see that, oftentimes there may be only a few winners, right? And to be a person of color, a black man, and specifically, we have to own part of this movement, right? And that's why I jumped into the artificial intelligence space, because I wanted to be at the vanguard of this movement.
Very, very cool. So, how many people are on your team right now?
Right. So the team consists of around 3 people, as Kabai and I, as well as some technical individuals. And then we have some consultants that we're doing in the PR space and the marketing space. I think we're probably around maybe all in 7-8 people, actually on payroll from time to time. But it's allowed us to move a lot more exponentially than we would if we didn't empower ourselves in this capacity, right? For us to be 4 or 5 months old, we're competing with companies with multi-million-dollar budgets, right? And we're trying to hit at that same level, and oftentimes surpassing what they're doing. And so, I call it my secret squad, but the work we're doing is impeccable. So shout out to them as well.
Very nice, very nice. And I'll start off with Kabai on this. As tech founders, take us through kind of what your day-to-day looks like.
As a founder, I would say our day-to-day is getting as much visibility as we can, 1, from our potential customer base, and 2, from the VC world. There's lots and lots and lots of startup companies out there, and so there's a lot of noise that you kind of have to cut through to stay on people's radar. And so I think that just kind of consists of Well, for us, we from the beginning decided that the best way to approach this would be a hands-on approach because of Derek's familiarity with the QSR market, quick service restaurant market. He knew about a lot of the regional and national conferences. And so instead of just doing cold calls, doing cold emails, we're actually on the road quite a bit, going and meeting people face to face, shaking hands, making connections, and leveraging the network that way. So I would say ever since the beginning of the year, we've probably been on the road 75% of the time, wow, which is insane.
Yeah.
But it's what's necessary. It's what's required. And when we're not on the road, like I said, we're just trying to maintain visibility with our potential client base and with VC. So that's a lot of setting up meetings, emailing, calling people, and just lots and lots of communication. That's more for me specifically. For Derek, obviously, he's doing all of everything I just said, plus product development. So, he's working 25 hours a day. He's finding like some extra hour in the day. So I don't know where he finds it. So, I've been kind of at this point doing a lot of leveraging networks, reaching out to people, in terms of marketing, in terms of PR, in terms of, getting on the radar of VCs. Derek's doing the same thing. Plus, building our product and working with the other engineers.
So, Derek, tell us a little bit about product development and kind of what you are experiencing in that capacity.
Yep. So on the product development side, it's very customer centric. We're working with a handful of quick service restaurants right now. I think we're in 3 of the top 20, and it's interfacing with our counterparts, understanding, okay, hey, we will deliver this type of solution. What would be the impact for your business? How do we test this in real time with individuals that may be in your drive-through right now? Then going back to the drawing board, the whiteboard with the technical team and figuring out how do we productize this to make it functional and to make it robust enough such that we can take it to market and deliver it for those customers. And so it's a lot of, introspective thought. Oftentimes it's a lot of bouncing ideas off of my network as well as my trusted business partners with the intent that we're trying to create the best solution possible, right? And being hands-on as much as possible and listening to the customer intently allows us to do that.
Excellent. And so one of your products is My. And tell us a little bit about, we talked about Encounter AI. Let's talk about My and what problem it solves. And then go into a little bit about like the development of My. Like what was the process for you, and how long did it take to develop My? What was the process from MVP to a production ready service?
Right. So My really started with me consulting. Right. When I was consulting, I saw firsthand just some of the issues that restaurants were having as customers were demanding these new experiences. They were bringing mobile phones on site. They wanted kind of the latest and greatest things that they had in their homes and on their phones, in their cars oftentimes as well. And the restaurants were struggling, right? Like restaurants got hit with delivery drivers and now the drive-thru was backing up, right? Restaurants got hit with delivery drivers and now the number of customers that were coming in were different. And so all of these changing demands impacted how they began to service. And I saw that a technology solution can fit there, right? And so how we started at the inception of Encounter AI was just looking at, if we wanted to solve this problem from first principles, what would we need to do, right? And so if you're familiar with the digital assistant space, it's still very robotic, right? It's somewhat close to the interactive voice recorders that we kind of saw when you called customer service years ago, right? Where they wanted to press one decision tree. They want to be, press one, what's prompt A, what's prompt B, what's prompt C, what's prompt D, right? And for me, it didn't make sense to recreate that, right? Drive-through has its own language, if you will, right? Everybody kind of knows you pull up, you wait for somebody to say hi, and then you really bombard them with your whole order, right? Like, let me get a Whopper, let me get fries, let me get a large chocolate shake, right? You're not waiting for these sequential prompts to happen. And so from a development perspective, we had to step back, kind of throw what most people were doing out the window and figure out how can we actually solve that problem? How can we solve the problem, which we call multi-intent, where you can just give everything that you want to give. You don't have to walk through these sequential menus, and we can actually interpret that and get it back to where it needs to be as accurately as possible, right? And so that was the first iteration of the product. There, we probably went over around 500 hours of recording, just figuring out what drive-through orders sound like, transforming that into what's called a machine learning model, and then allowing that model to now facilitate what would be our ordering system, right? And so today, just like I described, you can walk through that ordering process. You don't have to act like you're talking to a computer. You don't need to slow down. You don't need to pronounce. Like, give me your raw, I'm from the South, I'm going to use slang, I'm not going to pronounce correctly. And our goal is to deliver that order as accurately as that ordering associate will deliver it on site. So
I love it. I mean, I'm waiting for it to to hit everywhere, because to be honest, I'm so frustrated with the whole customer service experience of a lot of restaurants, that it makes it such an unpleasant experience when you go through some of these restaurants, and the interaction is just so dry. There's no sense of like respect for the customer, and it frustrates you to the point to where you get up to the drive-through window and you immediately want a manager. Like, I want to speak to a manager right now. And it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
Like, it should be a pleasant experience.
Yeah. We've all had that, right? And the one thing I always say is, when I bring it up, those are the stories I get, right? And so that's how I knew that we had a problem, right? Like, no one was like, oh, well, why would you do that, right? They immediately started with, like, their bad drive-through experience from last week, right? It wasn't like years ago. It was like last week or within the last month, right? And so we knew it was a significant pain point that a lot of people were experiencing. And for us, that was valuable, right? Because we didn't have to go try to create a solution for a problem that didn't exist, right? It was front and center, and a lot of people knew about it. And that's what made it a great opportunity.
So how long did it take for you to be able to kind of like develop even your first iteration of Mai?
So first iteration of Mai was around 3 to 4 months. We're really, I guess on paper, we 6 months old, 6-7 months old. Around 3 to 4 months for the first iteration. That was just going through recordings that I had amassed from public sources as well as some private individuals that were willing to work with me, and getting it off the ground, right? And then from there, we did the trade show circuit where we were going directly to franchisees, and we were saying, basically, look at this. This is what we're doing. And the light bulb went off at that moment, right? And so it's been really 2-3 months since we've launched that MVP, where we're now directly talking to franchisees, and we're in the building where they're making their decisions, and we're coasting along and getting the job done.
Gotcha. It's pretty dope, man. I'm loving it. So let's talk a little bit about AI, artificial intelligence. It's not new. Well, it's new, but it's in its infancy, right? And,
definitely.
I know that there's, especially just thinking through kind of like what this interaction with an artificial intelligence would be for just like a drive-through. I know there was an incident that happened to me, I don't know, maybe I would say 2 decades ago, 2 decades or more ago, where I was going through the drive-through. And I was broke at the time, I'll be honest. I didn't have that much money.
Understood. We all been there. We have all been there. And
so, it was me and my brother, and I'm sitting there. We're trying to figure out how much money we have between the both of us, and like what we can get for whatever. It was like that classic, like Chris Rock when he went in. It was like, how much can you, how many wings can you get for 25 cents or something like that?
I knew you were going to go there.
And so, I know it. And that's the kind of interaction that's not like a normal everyday. Well, I wouldn't say it's not normal, but it's not within the flow of let me have a number 6 with a large Coke and blah 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 blah. That's more of a hey, well, how much would it be if I had this and have that? Like I can see that kind of being a challenge. So what technical challenges have you all had to address when building and implementing this solution?
So I just want to hop on that real fast, right? Like when we look at technology and we look at personalization, right? Like being able to say to a computer, hey, like I got $2.50 and I want you to give me the most amount of calories possible. Like that's something a system can figure out real fast, right? That a person really can't do, right? And so you have to think, as we empower these machines with this new form of intelligence, it's new forms of commerce that we can create that were never possible, right? And so like you mentioned, instead of trying to barter and bring things down, you can just now ask that simple question and say, hey, this is what I can pay. You do your calculation, you tell me what I can get, and they're going to give you what's going to work out, right? But get back to some of the technical hurdles we've had to cross. Just starting off, the quintessential drive-through is a noisy environment, right? So the first thing was just figuring out how to capture speech in an environment where you got trucks, you might have dogs barking, kids in the back seat, bees flying around, the neighborhood, world's loudest car right behind you, right? Like there's so many different things that we heard in those initial recordings, and we was like, whoa, this is a tremendous problem to solve because it's real world, right? When you look at a lot of the solutions that's in our homes, like for the most part, that's a white box environment, right? And what I mean by that is like, oftentimes you're turning down a TV or it's really nobody having conflicting conversation when you say whatever command you're going to say to your favorite device, right? For us in the fast food industry, that's not the case, right? We have to have a scenario where we can accurately pull out what you actually want to order amidst all of that secondary noise, right? And so that was one of the first problems that we had to solve. The second one was just around natural language understanding, right? And for natural language understanding for the audience is essentially taking text that we get from a transcription and turning that into what that person actually wanted to order, right? So as you can imagine, depending on your dialect, you may pronounce Whopper and it comes out correctly. You may pronounce Whopper and it comes out W-A-P-A, right? And so from a perspective, we just had to find ways of understanding what was the large demographic of our recordings really talking about and systematically use technology to always get that correct, right? So no matter your dialect, no matter your accent, your gender, whether you're having a cold that day, like we had to figure out a way to handle it all. And that was another one of the technical hurdles we had to
do. Yeah, I can just imagine. I mean, I know we've all encountered problems where we text something to somebody and they take it a certain way. And it's like, yeah, right, like, I didn't mean it like that. Right? Or, you know, that's not the way I inferred it. And it's like, oh, okay. Then so I can just imagine how that is just from a speech standpoint, where you're dealing with different accents, you're dealing with, you know, how people enunciate differently. You're dealing with, you know, people that may have, you know, maybe speech impediments, or like you said, maybe they're sick that day, and you know they're nasally or whatever. So, wow, that's a big hurdle to overcome.
Right, and I always tell people, right, what's different for us because we're a commerce solution and because we're in the public spaces, like, you know, when your device at home gets it wrong, you can quit, right? Like we can't quit. Right. Like either we're going to sell this burger of choice or we're not. And like there's penalties that come with it, right? So unfortunately, we don't have that notion where we can be like, hey, like, yeah, we can't do it today. You know, go get, you know, the manager and he'll do it for you, right? Like that's not our option as we build our technology.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that really fortifies, you know, kind of your solution and what you're doing, knowing that there's little room or no room for error. That just makes it that more solid of a product when you deliver it. So that's cool. So what you know, there's a number of cloud platforms out there that make it, you know, a little easier for developers and for people who are developing artificial intelligence, machine learning platforms to be able to utilize and make that onboarding process a lot easier. Are you all using any type of cloud platforms? And if so, like, why did you pick one over the other?
Definitely. We're cloud neutral. Our device is a hybrid device, so we have some processing that occurs on site, kind of within the four walls of the restaurant. We also have some follow-up work that goes to cloud providers. And each one of them has various things that they're great at, right? You know, for example, your Google, they're handling assistants and all of these type of things. It's on everybody's phone today. Like for them, they probably are best in class for natural language processing and speech to text, right? On the Amazon side, they're doing incredible things with recommendation systems and things like that. So there's a few components that you can pull from a lot of the major cloud providers, especially in the AI and machine learning space, that give you at least the capability to jump as you're building out MVPs and things like that. So
pretty cool. And so let me ask you this. In your opinion, you know, and you know, either one of you can take this question. What's the future of AI, more specifically, kind of when it comes to hospitality and retail? Like, I know you're coming out with Mai and everything like that, but where do you see this? Where do you see this going?
This could be my favorite question. You want to take it, Kabah?
I'll start off. I would say, and this is a part of why we're doing what we're doing. Google has Assistant, Amazon has Alexa, Apple has Siri, and they're all in a race to get those services out of your pocket and off your desk and into the real world. And so, we're throwing our hat, in that ring to compete with those guys. And so essentially where it's going is those same or similar services, but in the real world. So being able to go into your favorite big box store, and instead of walking up to a person, you walk up to a kiosk that has the virtual person in it and say, hey, where can I get such and such? They direct you to it. But they also say, hey, since you're looking for these two items, did you also think about getting this item? And so in a nutshell, I think it's going to be about tapping into not only convenience, but tailoring everything to each individual person. The same way that now there's an AI process online that, depending on what websites you go to and what products you look at, now all of your advertising is going to be specific to you. There's no more, in general, I'm trying to advertise this whole group of people. Depending on what my browsing history has been for the last week, that's the advertisements I'm going to get. And all of that same thing is going to start happening in the real world. Like if you think about, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Minority Report. You walk around, they scan something on you, whether it's your retina or whether it's, just some RFID chip. And it's just like, oh, hey, Kaba, how are you? Do you want to go and try this? Or do you want to buy that? But that's, from the advertising standpoint, that's a little bit more sinister. I like to think of it in a more positive way, in that when I walk into Target or wherever, Target knows exactly what's specific for me, what I want, and it's just going to say, oh, if you just head to aisle such and such or whatever, and it knows it's going to be something that a person can never do. I can never walk into Target and just go up to an employee and just say, hey, I'm Kaba, can you direct me to what I need? It's never going to happen. But with AI, it knows my history, it knows my taste, it knows my preferences. It knows, what I need when I need it, sometimes even before I do. And for some people, that's a scary thought. It's not scary for me. I'm all about convenience. I'm all about catering specifically to my needs. And, that's, when I love my Google feed in my phone, because when I'm reading about the news and I'm reading about blogs, it hides everything that it knows I'm not interested in. And it only shows me the stuff I want to read. And it's going to be the same set of services in the real world. And that's
I agree with you. I love my Google. What is it called? Google News or News. Yeah, I love it because I don't, and then it gives you the option, of course, to do you ever want to see this again? It's like, no, this is. Right. This is such and such news. I don't want to see that type of stuff. So I can definitely see that it provides a lot better customer experience. And this is a good segue into this next question, because I think it, at least, kind of from what I've seen, and I'll say, that I'm working on a project right now that it's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of dealing with this whole AI and retail space, so to speak, but in a different manner, right? But I see what's coming down the pipe, and I can see where some people, not consumers but workers, are afraid of AI because they think, hey, it's going to take my job, or even though your platform is creating a more consistent customer experience, and you're freeing up resources to focus on other things. Some people can see that as taking away their job. So, kind of what's your thoughts around that whole thing? What would you say to those people to kind of quell their fears?
I think we've heard the problem and the question a lot, right? I I think that we tackle it a few different ways. But first, I'll often bring up just like the librarian context, right? Like if you compare your historical librarian to like Google, there's no way that he or she would ever be able to bring back the amount of search results, whether it's proverbial books, whether it's articles, whatever the case may be. It's just physically impossible for them to give you that same level of service, right? And I think because we're moving to this data first era, like it's impossible now for, within the historical context, ordering associates, retail associates to service customers without being augmented with some form of intelligence, right? And so as you can imagine, from a labor perspective, of course, we are going to see potentially some churn around, hey, I now have this augmentation, whether that's our system, whether it's an iPad device, wherever the case may be, where that person can now have a higher ratio of output, right? So they may have to go from their solo output to maybe doing the work of a person and a half or 2 people, 3 people, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to see the churn there, right? But our belief is in this world of instant convenience, which is kind of what we're building. Like people can be repurposed, right? Like 5 years ago, you wouldn't have said, hey, like, I'm going to go deliver Burger King to somebody at their house, right? You would have been like, okay, hey, they're going to go drive their car to the drive-through. Excuse me. They're going to drive their car to the drive-through, get their own food, and drive home, right? Like now that this intersection has happened, we're just seeing a multitude of new supporting services emerge. And I believe that same thing is going to happen for artificial intelligence, right? The second thing that I want to bring out too is that if we use it right, artificial intelligence can level the playing field, right? So one of the things that I've always been passionate about is just like, how does this serve underestimated communities, right? I think of like food deserts, which have historically been reside in underserved communities, right? Where they didn't have big box stores and they didn't have adequate food. Now, if we have a system where we can say, hey, drone, or hey, moving vehicle, this neighborhood needs fresh broccoli and grocery and juices and milk and so on and so forth. And we can go deliver that in near real time at a cost that's effective for that community. Like fundamentally, we lift the boats of everybody, right? And I want to keep that front and center, that I think the end goal for the world that we're creating is that everybody gets to benefit. And while we're going kind of through the chasm, of course, we're going to see the churn and burn, but I don't think it's any different than like the first industrial revolution, right? I think they're calling this one the fourth industrial revolution. We're still going to see that churn and burn. Of course, we're seeing, in the news now, they're saying retail apocalypse and stores are closing and things like that. But as we retool these jobs, these organizations, these businesses, all of that's going to come back, right? And people are going to have new experiences that they're fond of, and they're going to re-engage this new world and interact in that new world.
I love everything you said, man. And I think the key word that you mentioned was retool, right? And people eventually, people can adapt, but I think people have to adapt. They have to be ready to adapt to what's coming down the pipe, whether that's, re-educating yourself, learning how to code, for instance, doing something that's going to allow them to take advantage of this new tech ecosystem. And that's why I think, organizations like Blacks in Technology is vital, and especially the work that you all are doing as being a face of a tech startup is essential. It's because we need that representation to show people in our community that, hey, this is coming whether you like it or not, right? And we need to get on board with it now before we're left behind, because we're already seeing what can happen to communities that don't start to turn that corner before things start to go. I mean, you see a lot of I don't know how it is in parts of Chicago, but I know here in Ohio, we've got Toledo, we've got Cleveland that were devastated when manufacturing and things like that left the area. And so if these places and people are, we're not ready, we're not on board to make this change, we're going to get left behind. But I think that if we show that representation, we show that you can participate in this tech ecosystem, that we can get on top of this and be a little bit more ahead of it than we were before. So
I agree, and you're right on point. Like I mentioned, I went to school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right, and used to do some economic development work with a few of their municipality organizations, and they always used to champion, hey, Milwaukee used to be the parts manufacturer of the world, right? So, like, pound for pound, most exports came out of the Milwaukee region, and the idea was that, like, if you knew outsourcing was coming, like you say, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, like, why wasn't there some form of ownership that you tried to get in that new wave, right? And I think moving those parallels to today, I think that's the same conversation, right? Either we're going to be prepared and have some type of ownership, some type of equity in these new systems that are going to emerge, or similar to, like you're mentioning, we're going to get left behind, right? And we don't know if this is the last go round, right? Like, each kind of wave that we go to, you kind of see this churn and burn cycle of, we imagine new technologies and then we implement those new technologies, right? And that kind of often follows that economic boom and bust cycle, right? We're imagining new technologies, we're deploying and implementing those new technologies, right? And so for artificial intelligence, if we're saying that this is the next frontier, if we never go to the moon and if we never go to some of these utopic places that people are envisioning, this might be it, right? A machine doing X percentage of work. If that's the next frontier, we have to prepare for it, right? And we have to be due diligent in making sure that we're the best equipped to participate in this new economy.
100%. So before we get out of here, I want to hear from both of you about, like, what advice would you give to Black tech entrepreneurs, maybe embarking in this space, or just entrepreneurs in general? Kind of give us a little bit of, advice of, hey, this is what what you should do. Here's some advice for you. I'll start with Kabah.
For me, and Derek and I, we were discussing this before we hopped on the call. We were kind of saying everybody wants to be, the Bill Gates or the Steve Jobs, and nobody kind of wants to be that person who just were there in the beginning. They supported them, but they don't have the books and the recognition and whatnot. For me, like, I'm perfectly fine if it's Derek Johnson that goes down in history for revolutionizing, fast food service, right? But when he presented the idea to me, like a light bulb went off over my head, and I said I 100% will be a part of this to help support this to fruition. So, don't have so much hubris if someone else has an amazing idea and they're inviting you to participate. Don't say, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm going to wait to be an entrepreneur when I have my own idea. Like, these brilliant ideas aren't completely democratic, right? Like, somebody's going to have that flash in the pan, but they also are going to need a team around them to support them to
right.
bring that idea to fruition. And you can't do it by yourself. So if you're the one with the great, wonderful, huge idea, and you have something special, build a team. Don't say, it's me, it's only me, I'm going to go out and do this on my own. It's not going to work. And if you come across a person who has that brilliant idea, don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm going to support you however I can to make this the most successful thing possible.
That's 100% on that. I see so many people that I encounter that have that mindset that, no, I'm just going to build something different, and it's just like, I don't mind people building, but it's like, if someone has, the foundation and they've already have something in mind, why not go ahead and support? It's not saying that you can't branch off later and do your idea or do something different. But it always helps to provide support, because who knows later on what support you'll need, and maybe that same person will be behind you as well. So I definitely agree. And what about you, Derek?
Exactly.
Yeah, so just I wanted to dovetail on this, and then I'll go into kind of mine. But often going back to music, right? Like we had the Motowns, right? We had, if you go to the '90s generation, we had the Bad Boys, and I'll even throw the Death Rows and No Limits, right? These were impeccable. The Rockefellers. These were impeccable movements of people that got together that wanted to change the paradigm of the industry that they were operating in, right? While we had successful Black and brown founders, we haven't had those large movements yet in this space. And for me, just echoing, I think that's the next vanguard, right? How do we do this as a collective? And then to answer your question on just advice for founders, I would say find the problem you're uniquely positioned to solve, right? I think a lot of why what we're doing works is because we brought a lot of the expertise to the table already. Having formal consulting experience on both sides of the table, having research and development experience on a few sides of the table, so that we can look at an idea and we can say, okay, how can we make this work, right? We had a big conversation with a large quick service restaurant organization, and they're going to bring you to task on, do you know your stuff, right? That's the first part of getting in the door, right? And so if you're just doing this because you heard that it may make you some money or that it's the new cool industry to be in, you're going to kind of, I don't want to say you're going to fail, but people are going to pull your card a lot more because they're going to see that you don't really understand it, right? If you can position yourself and be a thought leader in the space and do things that are in your wheelhouse, I think you're going to have a much better chance of, one, finding opportunity, two, beating competition, and three, having people see you as a leader in the space, right? And all of those are required for you to really drive a business and make it this large-scale business.
Man, that's excellent. A lot of excellent knowledge that you just shared with us. I just want to kind of say, something that you touched on as far as collaborating. I think that I agree with you. I think that's kind of like the next vanguard. I think it's something that's needed in our space. Collectively, I think we're better working together than we are, split apart. I wish more people thought like that. And I'll go back to, what you touched on with the music industry. Here in Cincinnati, there were a number of groups that, locally, and I wouldn't even just say locally, they were making moves outside of Cincinnati as well, right? And so, you had people like High Tech, who was the producer, and you had a crew of people that he had under him or beside him, I should say. And then there were all these these other pockets of groups. Everybody was dope in their respective groups, right? And one of my biggest things were we rarely worked with each other, right? We rarely got together to support each other the way that a New York did, the way that an LA did, the way that an ATL did, right? And I think that it hurt the Cincinnati music movement because there wasn't that level of unity. There was always kind of this kind of cutthroat, I need to be the star. And, even though no one was really a star at that time, except, and except for who had a little fame, High Tech at the time. But, and it was just there was just kind of this cutthroat environment. And I could never understand why people, I would put a group of Cincinnati lyricists against anybody, but there was never that collective. And I see that a little bit in the space that we're in. And I wish there was more collaboration. I wish, between organizations and my space as well, that would work together because, to me, we're not going to boil the ocean, right? One organization is not going to transform the entire industry. That's just impossible to do. But I think a collective of us can really make more of an impact. So
I agree. And I'll leave with this thought is that, I think when you look at all of the movements that were revered from our community, right? they all started with, we need to solve a problem that's going to impact us, right? And for me, artificial intelligence is a part of that new thing, right? We understand that for the future of our communities, we need to figure out how to govern it from a political perspective. We need to figure out how do we feed ourselves, like all of those type of things. We now have the mechanisms to bring back, right? We had grocery stores growing up. They're not around anymore, right? Nobody came in 20 years, right? How do we now, it may be your proverbial cashierless grocery store, right? But if that's in the middle of a neighborhood that hasn't had a grocery store in 20 years, that's just going to change that environment, right? How do we now create these solutions where people feel like we actually care, right? The only people that can do it is us. No one else is going to come and deliver those solutions. And so I think that's what takes that group mindset. That's what takes making sure that when capital is allocated, that it goes to the right places and bridging those worlds to need to touch each other, right? And compliments to you too for doing the show, right? Like you mentioned, you may not always have the support, but it's making sure that you get out there and you let the right people get heard.
Doubt.
So thank you.
I appreciate, like I said, definitely appreciate you all coming on to the show. I love highlighting, Black tech entrepreneurs and really promoting the things that you all are doing, because your guidance and your leadership is what's going to transform what we do. So I thank you all for that. So before we get out of here, tell us what's next. What's next for what's next for Encounter AI? What's next for you all?
You got it, Kay? You gonna take it?
Yeah, what's next for us is, we want to be the de facto voice interface for commerce globally. Digital commerce is the future. And we feel like voice is the most natural way to conduct business, and people are going to want to gravitate towards it. So we want to lay that foundation and be the cornerstone.
How can people find out more information about Encounter AI?
We got the website, EncounterAI.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Instagram, Derek Johnson. On Twitter, Derek Johnson. We're touchable. So if you got ideas, if you want to collab, I'm serious about everything I've said. Reach out to me. Reach out to us. Let us know, and we definitely help out where necessary.
Excellent. Well, guys, I definitely want to thank you all for coming on to the show. I wish you all the best of luck. I will be getting in contact with you all soon, because BitCon 2019 is coming up in October. That's our annual conference. And, I would love for you all to be able to, represent yourselves and your company at BitCon 2019. So I'll definitely stay in touch with you all. Best of luck to everything, and keep us abreast on what's going on. I mean, I'd love to promote, whatever you all are doing. It's all about just sending an email to me and saying, hey, can you promote this? Like, we have this coming out, or we're doing this event, or whatever. And we'll make it happen. All right. Take care.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.